Welcome back, everybody, to the Wild Faith Podcast. My name is Evan Bungham, and I have my co-host Luke Timmons with me here tonight, and we have a very special guest for you guys tonight. We have Ryan Pinkalla in the house. He is the co-host of the Crappie Chronicles. He also has a book out on Amazon called The Frozen Kitchen, and he runs a podcast with two other big influencers in the fishing space called Past The Barb. So without further ado, Ryan, how are we doing tonight?
So good. That was an epic introduction.
I appreciate that.
I normally don't get the full rollout, like that. There you go. Sweet. So yeah, stoked to be here. Thanks for having me on. I think this is gonna be fun. But yeah, super stoked to be here, and yeah, let's get this thing rolling, dude.
Love it. Yeah. So kind of before we dive into the nit and gritty of kind of everything, I know it's a sad time for you because ice fishing is slowly coming to an end. But There's still good ice to be found. Just give me a brief rundown really, really quick how the ice fishing season went and how Crappie Chronicles went.
It honestly was a kind of interesting year overall. I don't know, we kind of had a weird focus going in. If anyone's familiar with what we do on the show, it's kind of like targeting really big crappies. So it's I don't know, we go out of our way to really, I don't know, make
you guys travel a lot.
It needs to be, you know what I mean? It could just be easy and we could just go and catch fish, but we have a goal. So it's we're just trying to catch these really big ones. And this year, for whatever reason, we decided we were going to hyper focus on that. So we started the year off with a couple of trips, which was fun. We did a Wisconsin trip. So we're based around the Twin Cities metro area, and it's super heavily pressured fishing, the whole deal. So we took a trip to northern Wisconsin, which was super fun, way different than what we normally do. And that was epic. That was one of the better trips we've done, honestly. And we've gone to a lot of cool places, but we did that one. We fished a ton around the metro. And again, that was just an absolute grind, but we caught some absolute monster fish and laid down some pretty cool footage this year that I think people were pretty stoked on. So that was cool.
Nice.
But it was tough. It was a lot of days. And I would say so this was our 5th season of the show, and more than any other year, I felt like we were swinging and missing a lot. But the days when
5th season,
this was season 5. And
nice. That is wild.
Yeah. So for it to kind of come to what it is, it's grown to be pretty freaking big show. It's pretty fun, and we're getting some cool opportunities with it. So we had some other trips. We filmed some stuff that didn't come out yet. We did kind of a bigger Western trip or whatever, some more multi-species stuff. It was cool. So there's a lot more to come on that. We're not going anywhere. We're planning on keeping it rolling, but it's sick, dude. Yeah. So a lot of ice fishing. We have an end of the year party kind of thing down here in the metro. We work with a brewery. We have our own Crappie Chronicles collab.
Nice.
Beer. It's pretty sweet. So
nice.
We have a big party at the brewery at the end of the year. It's a big St. Jude Children's Hospital fundraiser.
Sweet.
And we had a bunch of people come out to that. It was super fun. We raised a bunch of money, gave away a bunch of stuff, and that was kind of that was right at the beginning of March. And we'd given away hey, come fish with us for a day type of thing. And last year at that event, and the guy that won, we took them the day after the party this year. So
really
a whole year to cash it in. Anyway, that was our last big group, hey, let's go ice fishing was. So I don't know, what is today? It's the 12th. So 10 days ago, I guess. And I still got buddies up north that are fishing, and I got a couple invites to go up there, but I'm kind of just I'm already putting stuff away. 65 degrees. I'm let's move on,
I'm impressed because I think of the ice fishing industry and being the little bit that I got to be in it for a couple of years, the guys that are, and I give you guys are diehards, and the people that just live and breathe ice fishing, especially when you get in the panfish side where you can fish it till the ice goes out. It's the grind doesn't stop until the ice is gone. And it's but I'm in the same boat where it's it's 60 degrees. Turkey hunting stuff's been out for a month now. I'm
well, and you get it. I mean, you're on the social media side of stuff. It's you can see all your analytics and all this stuff.
Right. Oh, for sure.
I mean, we've been doing this. This is our, like I said, our 5th season, and we've pretty routinely seen mid-February and on views crash, all this stuff. So it's you can get out there and really give it hard and have a cool late ice run, but even if it's really dope, like nobody's gonna care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate part. So
Yep.
it's like you either have to hold it till the fall or whatever. So
So let's kind of just get into. We want the viewers to learn more about you, and this is kind of the whole the bit that we do with this podcast is we try to get more in depth, just personally on a personal level, and we want just give us a little intro, like how you got into hunting, how you got into fishing, and then we can kind of rope that into like where you got into your expert culinary skills, we'll call it.
All right, yeah. Yeah, man, I don't know. I just grew up around it, right? Like I feel like a lot of people have kind of similar stories, right? It's like my dad was super into it. I have some uncles that do a bunch of hunting and fishing and all that stuff. So just kind of was around it a lot, which I think initially sparked my interest. But as I started getting older, because I did sports and stuff when I was younger too, and was pretty into some of that. Playing.
Where did you grow up at?
South Metro here. I went to
Nice.
Burnsville, so like just down here basically, and still live over here in Egan. So, but yeah, I mean, pretty much just doing that. But I was always bumming around with guys going, ride bikes to go fishing, all that stuff before we could drive and all that. But I was always like glued into like a lot of the hunting stuff too, and like my dad started going on some more trips like when I got a little bit older, and I was like, damn, that seems pretty sweet. Like I want to be doing more of that stuff. And yeah, I mean, I think it really kind of started with that. I mean, he was always really big into like deer hunting and stuff, just like whitetails, in Wisconsin and whatever, and started doing that as soon as I was old enough to go. And all that stuff. Remember, he'd shoot a deer when I was 5 and come pick me up to go get on the blood trail and check it out. And
nice. Sweet.
I don't know, just like that kind of stuff. But I got sucked into like, I'll say fishing a little more hardcore just because it was more accessible to me, like with my buddies, right? But yeah, coming out of like middle school or whatever, started doing some more trips like out west, like going to Colorado and stuff, and doing some duck hunting in North Dakota, and the whole like traveling to do stuff like that, like the adventure side of it was like really what hooked me. Like I got a lot of friends that they hunt around here and they just hunt deer and whatever.
Yep.
And they're like, they go for a couple weekends a year and they're like, I'm good. But like it turned into like a 365 deal for me, where I was like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And just got super into it. And yeah, just more and more and more, and just never wanted it to like go down. So I was like, burn all vacation on every hunt, go on fishing, like all this stuff, like irresponsible. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Oh, I've been there.
Yeah. So that's I think just the beginnings of it, right? It was like just that initial spark and like realizing like, dude, I could do this. And, finally harvesting a few animals and being like, dude, I shot a deer, all this stuff. Like that was sick. Right. And then, I mean, yeah. And that I think evolved over time, right? Like getting into college and stuff, I started meeting a lot of the guys that I like literally like work with now, which is crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I went to college with Sobe. That's where we met actually. There, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there was like a pretty good group of Minnesota guys that we all went to school together at Stevens Point, which was, like an outdoor school. Everyone was hunting.
Oh, for sure.
Day and whatever.
My biggest regret's not going to a school in Wisconsin.
Yeah. So whatever, it was everything from like, because we were all on the bass fishing team. That's how I kind of got in with those guys and whatever. And next thing you know, we're like skinning deer in the front yard of houses, like on Main Street, and like, dude, it was crazy, right? So yeah, and then finally started doing like I said, always doing stuff with like my dad and whatever, which kind of the key there. But like, yeah, man, I started doing some solo trips and stuff, and did my first big one was like a solo antelope hunt, western South Dakota, and like,
nice.
I was like, game on, dude. Like, this is all I'm doing, is stuff like this. So, but through that whole process, I got super into the whole like wild game stuff, right? Like, I always grew up around like having tons of venison and fish in the freezer and stuff, and ducks and whatever, right? Turkeys, all this stuff. And I would say like, because we always ate it, right? But it was never this like, we're gonna do all this crazy stuff. It was like, we had the same 5 things we made all the time or whatever. And like, I think a lot of people, right? You get, you kind of get set into that kind of thing. And I can't honestly tell you what the initial like, where I was like, dude, I just need to do something different or whatever. It just started like happening, right? I got kind of into like sausage making and stuff initially, I think was kind of the deal. And I was
Were
like,
you like a big cook though beforehand, like outside of wild game or anything like that? Did you have? Because I feel like most cooks, like I look at it like myself, like I grew up cooking at a very young age and just kind of fell in love with it or through time. Or was it like, did you have a passion for food before you got into the wild game, or that idea clicked?
I don't, I mean, it's hard to say, right? Like, I feel like when I was younger, I always wanted to cook because that meant somebody else had to like do the dishes and stuff. And I was like, sign me up,
It's a solid
you know?
trade-off.
Like, all right. But then, oh, yeah, I mean, because it was like, whatever, making breakfast, eggs and bacon and stuff. And I'm like
Hmm.
young, like 10 years old, right?
Yeah.
Looking at my grandma's, right? But, yeah, I don't know. I just think over time, I just got like, I just, it turned into kind of more of like a creative outlet. Like I felt like I had all these cool ideas and I'm like, I could like just do that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And and then, you know, the more you get to talking to other people, it's like they don't have that same thing, you know? So I felt
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, maybe that's like something, you know? And kind of started pursuing that. And then it turned into like in like this was not like content. Don't get me like this was just like making food to eat.
Oh,
You know, like
nice.
in college, this was like, hey, like let's all go downtown and like, well, let's just go back to the house and let's like cook some food. Like it was just cooking for like drunk people, you know, and like whatever. But of course, that's like a different crowd, right? Everyone's like, this is so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
You know,
easy
so-
clientele, right?
Right. So I think, you know, whatever. It's a progression, right? So it goes to that. And then I think really that first big step was linking up with these other guys to do the Crappie Chronicles. I mean, I was always cooking and doing stuff, but yeah, that was like 5 years ago. I got really serious about it because they were the ones that initially it was actually super funny. I guess not to derail this from like the hunting stuff, but really
No.
where this launched was so I had just started getting really into kind of this like creative side of cooking, right? And had like a lot of aspirations and like zero platform, right? I was just like, man, if I could just something, right? You know? And whatever, over time just became friends with some of those guys and Adam Bartusek was
Mhm.
like filming or well, they had this idea. Right? This was it. There was no money behind this. There was nothing. They were just like he started like his kind of media business or whatever and had this idea like, hey, let's, you know, make this crappie fishing whatever thing in the metro. Like didn't really have, you know, not focused really. Like this was just
Mhm.
an idea. And whatever, they had one of their buddies from down south, Matt Pangrak here on that Bass Talk Live podcast. So he's like never gone ice fishing before. They took him out. This was like the first, maybe second episode ever filmed of the Crappie Chronicles.
Sure.
And it didn't go very well. Like they only caught a handful of eaters or whatever, and like just didn't have much, you know. And we had been chatting about some food stuff off and on, and I was like, "Oh, could you help me? Like maybe like take some pictures, like maybe we could like make a video or something." And it kind of was just like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And that day, so he called me up and he's like, "Hey, like we're trying to make this video. Like we didn't get a ton of good fishing stuff, but if you wanted to maybe like come over to my house and like cook, we'll film it for you and we'll like throw it in the video." I was like, "Dope." I was like,
Done.
"Yeah,
Sweet.
I'm there. I'm there." So I drove up. It was like this is like an hour beforehand. So okay, I'm like, "Cool. Yeah, I guess I can do that." He's like, "We got a bunch of crappies." Cool. I'm like, "Sweet." I show up like they aren't like cleaned or anything. This is just like a bucket of crappies in the garage. And I'm like, God damn it. So I get there and whatever. We're out in the garage filleting all these fish, and I threw down. We made like the first one. I think it was like blackened fish tacos and like these like whatever like fish skewer things, like all this stuff, and it went like so good and it looked awesome. We like filmed it and we put it out, and then like it did like whatever it you know like any series, it kind of started slow, right? But it was like that
Mhm.
was cool, and I think I linked up with them maybe like one or two other times and then they were like people seem to really like that, like do you want to be more involved? And then you know starting basically from then on it was like you know a big part of our show now. So I think that was my initial like, hey, I got my foot in the door, I better put like some serious effort into this kind of thing, you know. and
Sure.
uh and but that was I think like the major spark where I thought like, dang, I could do something with this. And it just, you know, and then I'm like, oh my God, like I'm doing all this stuff with wild game, fish, boom, every day, something new. Yeah, because I've had a couple jobs like doing some cooking stuff because that's a question I get some because people are like, were your parents like super into cooking? Did you like do you work in a restaurant? And I'm like, no, like none of that. So like I had one crappy job working at a pizza place in Stevens Point when I went there. And, like I just ran the fryer and like made whatever sandwiches,
Nice.
Bill's Pizza,
Nice.
and whatever. And so I worked there for like, I don't know, a year or something. And then post college, I actually got one, like I still like kind of like am proud of this, even though it's totally like not that cool. But I worked at, so they had the Ryder Cup in Minnesota, like at
Yes.
Hazeltine, right? That's ago.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever. That was a long time ago, but like whatever. So I got a job there cooking at their like, they hired like a bunch of people. Basically, they had like an open interview thing. You just showed up at this hotel because I didn't have a job or whatever. So they were paying people like $15 an hour to like be involved in like cooking or whatever. So basically, if you showed up there, you got a job. Really, is how it went down. But if you were like, yeah, I know how to like do this or this or this, they're like, okay, we're gonna put you in like this other group of people. And so I got into their like whatever prep kitchen thing.
Yeah.
And
To like a line chef.
Yeah, so like for
Yeah.
like 3 weeks, all I did was like cut up vegetables and stuff. And then I ended up getting out. So that was like before the event. So then I go to the actual like when it starts, they like had all the because there's like some like legit chefs there, right?
Oh,
Like,
I'm sure.
just, so the guy that I got linked up with, I think, is the guy that runs. I want to say he was like the pit master, like the barbecue guy at like Talladega Speedway, was like running the rest of the
Sick
thing we were in. So he basically grabs like 6 people that he came to like over the past couple weeks or whatever, and you're like, now you work for me in this other little thing. So we were making.
Next thing you know, you're in Mexico working for another chef.
Crazy, right? And like, I'm just like along for the ride. I'm like, yeah, dude, that sounds sick. Like, he's like, yeah, all right. And so I go to this thing. We're making like awesome. Like we're cooking for the Captain's Club at the Ryder Cup.
Sweet.
So it's like you got all these like celebrities and people in there, and you're just like in the back, just being like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like just trying to like survive, And so that was kind of like cool, but those couple jobs made me like, dude, I am not somebody that's gonna like work in a restaurant or like be you know what I mean? That was not my gig, but I was like the food aspect of was super cool. Granted, that was not like wild game cooking, but it was cool to be around like that industry, right? Totally different than anything I'd done before. And I was like, okay, there's like parts of this industry that are cool. This is not my jam, but like I get it. You know what I mean? So yeah, and then whatever, I've just kept doing my thing and got some other jobs doing other things, but the whole like passion for cooking was always there. And like it just really turned into what it is now, where I'm like going on these trips, like they're hunting trips, fishing trips, but the sole goal of them is to like capitalize on an opportunity to like get meat and then like cook and like show people interesting ways to do stuff. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. So
that's awesome.
I've always had mad respect for what you do because I look at like Steven Ranella and like when he got started with Meat Eater and that was it. I don't know of any other show outside of like Andrew Zimmerman, who like eats, from Bizarre Foods, where every once in a while he'll have like, there's one episode he has venison on there. I'm like, this is not a bizarre. This is like a staple for every Midwestern person.
Yeah.
But like the thing that I have respect for is like people don't understand like how good like not homegrown, but like food that you can harvest, bring it home and make it good. Like people have probably eaten the same venison the same way that grandma or grandpa made it or mom and dad made it for 20 or 50 years. And it's good, but it's not like you can make it amazing if you put some time and some love into it, where it's like, you could treat a backstrap just like you could a flaming young, like there's blueberries go great with venison. Who would have thought, like there's so many things like where it's like, I love, that's like the side of cooking that I love. And I'm a cooking nut where it's like, you can explore and get so creative with it. And it's awesome.
Yeah. And I get like sucked into these conversations all the time, right? Like, it's not even like on a podcast like this. It'll be like at an event or at a bar or something. And, you know, you get a couple going and you're like, all right. And then people start asking all these questions and you're like, I feel like I kind of go off on these rants or I'm like, because people, right. Okay. So like, I'll keep going back to kind of like the stuff that we're doing with the Crappie Chronicles, right? Because I feel like that was like my moment where I'm like, okay, like everyone's telling me what I should be making, and I'm like, I will do none of that. Like I want to do something original every time, something that I haven't seen anyone else do. Like that's my goal. So it's like I will come up with these ideas, and like they aren't all good, but like that's part of it, right? But I was like, if I can do so, the fish thing was like an afterthought. I'm like, oh yeah, also fish, yeah, okay, we'll mess with that too. But like the stuff with like wild game is endless, right? You got tons of opportunity there, and I'm just like, I get into these conversations where people are like that's cool that you did that with like fish or whatever, but you know, I'm trying to make my venison taste like a porterhouse or whatever. And I'm like, well, it's not. Just go buy that if you want. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're trying to turn something into something it's totally not, or like you know, like all these fish things. People are like, oh, I made that Italian fish sausage in your cookbook, it was pretty good, but it didn't really taste like Italian sausage. And I'm like, well, it's fish.
It's fish,
right? Like, I mean, so I think there's just like this brain block for people, right? As they get into this food thing, and they just are like, here's the things that I like, and how do I just make other stuff taste like that, versus like embracing everything for what it is, right? And that's kind of like my jam. Like I'm going to do like, okay, like this fall, like I was out in Montana, whatever, I've been out there the past handful of years and got like disturbingly kind of good at porcupine hunting. Okay, so take that for what it is. And like anyways, that
I love that.
Yeah, like whatever, because I was just like, they're here, I'm here, like this works, you know. And it turned
probably a little easier than elk hunting.
Well,
maybe not. I don't know. I've never shot a I think I've only seen one porcupine in my life.
Here's the thing with okay, sorry that this is going off.
No, that's good.
But so the thing with porcupines is they're very easy to kill, but they're very hard to find.
Sure.
So like that's the thing, because they don't like make sound or anything, right? So it's like you just gotta like find, because I think the majority of people that have killed one, they were hunting something else or just out there and they were like,
ran
here's
up on
one.
it.
When you like dedicate time to go and find one is a totally different game, right? Like it's something.
Do you have like a porcupine call, or like is it I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I just like hanging on miles till I find one, right? Because like they go up in trees or in these little caves, like all this stuff. Like, dude, I'm telling you, I've been to a lot of places. I got it dialed. I'm like, oh, dude, we got.
Have you filmed this yet?
Oh yeah, but I've put nothing. So I'm so bad, right? Like I film all this stuff. I got like 20, probably 20 slam dunk hunts like filmed that I never did anything with. So I know I need to put stuff out, but I have some I have some awesome stuff. So, but yeah, the one this fall, totally filmed that whole thing. It was pretty fun.
Nice.
I mean, it was like we were there on a deer. Like my dad had a mule deer.
Yeah.
So we went out there, whatever. He shot his deer day one. So I was like, well, you know what we're doing the rest of the time. So, but yeah, so like that, right? It was like, okay, I'm gonna go out there and like hunt till I get one of these things or whatever. So get the meat, and then it's like coming up with that idea. Like I'm stewing on that idea before that trip even starts. Like let alone like figuring all this stuff, like going on an elk hunt or whatever. We're like, oh, I'm gonna pack all this. What do I need to bring? Everything. Like for months, I'm like, all right, here's my like top 5 recipes that I want to nail. Like
love
all
that
this stuff. So like, yeah, the porcupine, like I've gone on several trips for like, I'll say interesting critters to like get meat, right?
Yeah.
And that was one of them where I'm like, hey, like I just want to do stuff that no one's doing, because like, you know, you go online and like anyone can go on YouTube now and Google just, or you know, look up recipes for just about any animal that's out there. But ones like that where it's like, if you look up things like porcupine, right? Everyone's like, this is a survival food. Like everyone's like burning the hair off in a bonfire, and then they're like cooking it with the guts in it, and then they're like, dude, this sucks. And you're like, yeah,
it probably does.
Nothing is good that way, actually. And so yeah, it just turned into like, okay, well, so like I said, I've tried lots of different animals and things and fish that everyone's like, that's terrible, that's trash, and most people have never had it. They just assume it's bad and come up with ways to cook it that are like unreal good. So that's kind of like, I think what keeps me like driving is all this stuff on social media, all this stuff on YouTube where people are like, that's bad, this is a trash fish, invasives suck, all this stuff, and I'm like, bring it. Like I want to do it right, do it justice, and like make a cool dish out of it that kind of brings like, you know, something regional to it, or like the spirit of like that animal or whatever. It's like if I go on like an elk hunt or, you know, something like that where you're like, man, that was an epic trip, like I'm probably not just gonna make like tacos, right? Like I will just day to day, but I'm like, that's not what I want to show. Like I want to show some just wicked recipe that people are like, God, that's awesome, you know?
So I want to know what's the worst dish you've ever made, and then what's the dish you're probably the most proud of that you've ever cooked?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Okay, so the worst one, huh?
Where it was just so, I mean, you're just eating it because you have to eat it, and you're just like, damn, this sucks.
Oh, man. Like a wild game thing, or just like in general?
Yeah,
what are we talking
a wild game.
Okay.
Because I've been there. I've got a couple that are just horrible.
Yeah, I think I could go a couple ways on this because, like, I think some stuff should have been good, but it was like, you know, like either forgot about it or something, you know, and you're like, oh, like way too late. God, let me just think. Give me 1 second here. That's a really good question.
Yeah, well, while you think, I'll say mine. So like mine would have been, we were backcountry early season mule deer hunting. I killed my first velvet muley opening day, or no, excuse me, the day after opening day. We ate that probably halfway through camp, and I was getting bored because we were on a 9-day trip trying to get 2 other guys deer. I had a fishing license staying right on the Missouri. I was like, let's go catch some catfish. Why not? Like middle of the day, it's 85 degrees. So I ended up catching probably 3 or 4. I'm going to assume they were just flatheads. And we have nothing besides like butter, salt, pepper. I'm like, yeah, it's like trout. We'll be able to, you know, just fry it in some tinfoil. It'll be good. It was disgusting. It was like puke your guts out. Not good. Really? I'm sure that, and partially it could be just the way that I cooked it, but it was not. And I've had lots of catfish. I've had lots of fried catfish, and it was good. But I tried cooking it like a trout, and it was not good.
Yeah,
very muddy tasting.
I want to say, so. I guess this wasn't directly my fault, but I had involvement, so I probably gotta at least a little bit. But this was like, God, this was a long time ago too. So one of this is throwing it back. Holy cow. So back when, you remember the Minnesota Waterfowl Association used to be a thing, like it's like since disbanded or whatever. No, whatever. So way back when they used to have a camp, it was called Woody Camp. It was like a youth event.
Oh, really?
And I went to that when I was like young, like maybe 12 or so.
Sure.
And it was like maybe like a 3 or 4, well, maybe it's a week. I don't know. It was like a decent amount of time, like summer camp, all about waterfowl hunting and stuff. Like,
nice.
Literally go there, learn.
Where the hell was that when I was a kid?
Yeah.
So yeah, they held it up in Fergus Falls at the Prairie Wetland Learning Center, and it was like literally like learn about decoys, dog training, calling, all this. It was
That's sweet.
But there was a couple day portion of it that was this like a cooking aspect to it, right? Where they were like, they had, I don't know, they must have had access to a game farm or something. Because I just remember, like,
they just shoot ducks.
They had
in the middle of July.
No, it's better. So I just remember this so vividly because they had 2 pickup trucks and they backed up. So it was like an outdoor. They had all these tables set up. You were like in teams, right? So you had like 5 people that you spent the whole camp with. So like when it comes to this cooking thing, it was like a cooking competition, right? So they gave you basically all these ingredients. You could make whatever you wanted, but you had to use ducks and you had to use pheasants. So they backed up these trucks and they had 1 pickup bed completely full of mallards and the other one was completely full of hen pheasants. Oof. Right? Like hundreds of birds. So
and you guys are like 12?
Yes. So they go through the whole thing, how to clean them. And then we sat there for hours cleaning birds. And then you had to do this like cooking contest, right? Well, like, dude, I'm not going to lie. Like, it was, the intentions were good, but we're sitting, this is like in the summer, right?
I was going
Like,
to say hot.
and like piles of birds in these trucks are just roasting. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
So we had,
probably already medium rare by the time you started cooking them.
And so you had to cook something with like the breast, the legs. You had to like use the whole thing, right? And then you got I believe it was like a deal where you got bonus points if you used like the gizzards and like stuff like that, right? So of course,
is this like a sick joke for the adults? So they're just sitting there drinking beers, and there's like, God, watch these kids.
It had to. But I just like, dude, I'm telling you, like, I vividly remember this so much. And so whatever, we come up with some recipe where we're gonna cook, like, make this sauce and cook all these ducks, whatever. I don't remember if that part was good or bad. It was probably whatever, right? But I vividly remember we're like, we're gonna try to win this thing, and we were like, we had like 10 pounds of like gizzards, right? Like, just they're like, just starting there, you're like, this is probably going to be super good, right? And so like, and they're all like full, right? Like you're cutting open like the stuff, and there's just like everything, right? They're full. There's like weeds in there. There's like rocks and stuff, and we're like cleaning them on a bucket of water, like. I don't know. It was a mess, but we tried to end up making some deal where we made some like teriyaki sauce thing, and we were just going to like fry them up quick. Well, if you know anything about gizzards, you don't just like fry them up quick, right? Like they're like super tough or whatever. And dude, I don't know what we put in the sauce. I don't know what happened, but like at the end, you have all those big like foil pans of like all the stuff you made.
Yeah.
And dude, we had like legit a full foil pan of these things, and they tasted literally like battery acid.
Yum.
And then they made like all the counselors, they were like the judges, right? So they had like vote on it. And I can't even imagine what they went through. Like a bunch of like, 12 to 16-year-old kids just like cleaning like rotting pheasants and stuff. And they were like, eat all this now. So
that would have been a funny, not reality show, but like that would have been awesome to film and watch that.
Yeah.
Like Gordon Ramsay style, like, hey, all right, kids, come on, go out and cook this. And yeah, that's funny.
It like bums me out that they don't do it anymore, because that was such a cool thing to be a part of. But like that like of the whole thing, it was super cool. That was probably like the most poorly executed part of this whole thing, was them just being like, you guys got it, you know? But anyways, yeah, that sucked. I guess what, like, more recently, it's more like experimentation stuff that like doesn't turn out, is kind of like where I hit these ones where I'm like, ooh, yeah, that didn't work. But it's usually with something weird, you know, like trying to do something with some like, you know, whatever, some sort of organ meat or something that you're just like, oh yeah, that did not hit. But I feel like I've gotten to the point now where I generally am like, I feel like I know what I'm doing enough that I'm like, I can at least make it taste like good enough. Like, even if it's a total like flyer, like, hey, I'm just throwing something together quick.
Well, I think that's like the unappreciated thing though with like a good chef, is like you learn to understand like flavor profiles in your mind, and then your brain starts to explore where it's like, well, God, that and that and that together would be like amazing, you know?
Yeah, or like you just spark ideas, right? You're like, oh, this like a meat that I've never had before. I try it and I'm like, yo, this is actually very similar texture to like this other thing I've made before. Okay, it would probably be good with like this type of thing or that. But my style too is more like, I don't even know what you call it, but I kind of like, you know, I'm not measuring anything. Like, it's a lot by feel, right? Like this, I'm tasting it as I go, that type of stuff. Versus like this, you know, like people that bake, man, blows my mind. Like where they're like measuring like all this stuff, and I'm like, leave me out of it, you know? But yeah, I mean, that's just kind of, I guess, the style I've developed, and it works really good for me. I know like people ask me all the time for recipes, right? Like, dude, you should see my Instagram DMs. It's crazy, right? Like people just out of the blue, they're like I need it right now. They're like, yo, I'm like heating up the pan. Like what, you know? I'm like, dude, like it's like I don't have that written down. You know what I mean? Like
you need to create yourself a like public chat on ChatGPT
Yeah.
and plug in all your stuff that you like and all your things and just let people go wild with it.
Yeah. Seriously. And like, dude, my dream, this is like, hear me out. This is legit. Like, this would be the ultimate setup for me, right? Is like, because dude, like I wrote a cookbook, right? And it was not super easy. Okay. Like just throwing that out there. But like actually writing recipes and then like giving them to people and being like, make this and like see if it works. Cause like I know what I'm doing, I wrote it. Like, I know where this leads to. But like for someone that's never made it to be able to like make it to the end and have it be right or whatever. But like the whole like writing recipes was tough for me. Like I said, I'm just out here just like sprinkling some stuff. I mean, like that seems like enough or whatever. Like sure, it's a tablespoon. I don't know, but like my dream is I literally could just make whatever I want, and somebody is just like right next to me, and like every time I'm like I sprinkle something, they're just like, here's how much that was, or like they're like wait, like you know what I mean? That would be.
You need a Jamie. You need Jamie from Joe Rogan. Just someone who's just sitting there watching you, be just like, Jamie, did you get that? And be like, yep, got it.
If somebody's out there and they want to just like count tablespoons, man, I'm here for it. Like I need that.
You'll feed them duck gizzards for payment.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll add a little more salt this time or something.
Yeah. So what's that one meal that your dish that you're most proud of that was in your mind like as unorthodox as it was, came together and would just blew your mind? What would that be?
I guess if it's like a kind of a crazy one, it would probably be, man, that's God. You got good questions, man. I wasn't expecting you to bring the heat like this. I honestly think some of like just because it's been like kind of my like immersion over the handful of years has been some of this fish stuff, right? And like, seriously, like this creating this like this fish sausage recipe was one that I was like when I like I'm like, this is the final recipe, and I'm like, dude, this is insane. Like it's like nothing I've had. And then I knew right away, like, oh my gosh, this opens the door for a lot of recipes. Like, because on the show we did it was like we made like sausages, we've made pizzas with it, we made different pasta dishes with it, all this stuff, but the same base recipe, right? So it's just creating this and like just a sauce, any kind of sauce that goes with it. But that was like a light bulb for me, and I was like, I made it for a bunch of people. Granted, I like the other guys, because we get asked that every time we do like a live stream or something. That's a question.
I'm sure.
Like, what's all your guys' favorite recipe? And I think for a long time it was we were on a trip and I made gyros, like an actual like block of fish and like sliced, like it turned out insane. For like a long time that was everybody's favorite. The video is awesome of it, by the way. And like that recipe right there was the most traction I've ever got on any recipe I've ever posted, any social media thing I've ever done was that recipe. And like it got published in Outdoor News and like various other places and stuff. And like for whatever reason, people latched onto it. Like I actually just submitted it to the people from Outdoor Edge, do like a wild game thing.
Nice.
They wanted the same recipe and like so I'm very proud of that fish sausage recipe. It was like something that it was a lot of tinkering to get, but that fish gyro one was an absolute.
It's pretty cool.
Run, like I guess as it was received by other people. So. But
so talking about relative stuff now, getting out of the ice fishing world and jumping into spring, I want to pick your brain on just give us a little bit of backstory on your turkey hunting experiences, maybe some stories, and then we can kind of dive into some turkey recipes you might have.
Okay, so I did not grow up turkey hunting, but my dad did a lot, and like my other dad too. So I guess just background. My whole family's from Wisconsin. Initially, like I didn't move here till 2001. So I moved to Minnesota 2001 with my family and everything. But basically grew up over there. My grandparents had a place in Wapaka, Wisconsin, just outside of Stevens Point there.
Nice.
So my grandma still lives over there, but they had a little bit of land there, but it was surrounded by tons of public. And those guys hunted it like crazy, like since they were in high school, you know? And so when I was a kid, I would go with them turkey hunting or whatever, but I'd never like had a tag or anything, right? I'd just go. And it was like mainly public hunting, not super easy, you know what I mean? Like at least in that area, it was like a lot of hunting pressure. So like initially, I was not into it that much, like because we didn't have a ton of action and stuff, and like I think I was there for maybe like 1 or 2 kills, and I was like, okay, this is like pretty sweet. And then I just remember like sitting there for hours, like plucking this thing and being like, "Why does anyone do this, man?" Like, and then like, yeah, didn't really do it that much. But I got really into bow hunting in like high school, like just shooting archery and
Mhm.
stuff. I'll say just archery in general, and then started doing some turkey hunting around like locally, just public. Again, like
Yeah.
we don't own any property or anything. You know, all the hunting I do is pretty much public up until like this past fall. You know, got permission
Sure.
and some stuff. But yeah, I found a handful of chunks of public just through like deer hunting and stuff that like, man, it seems like a lot of turkeys around. And like you know, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just going based off like what my dad, you know, used to do. And man, we went out and it was like, you know, the turkeys they used to shoot, it was like they'd come right in and kill them. Like if they were gonna get them, it was like easy peasy. You know, hey,
Yeah.
it worked out today, cool. And like, dude, like I've never, till I started hunting here, I never experienced hunting pressure like there is in the Twin Cities metro, right? Like
Ugh.
all of these postage stamps of this or, you know,
Mhm.
wildlife management areas. It's like, dude, there's like 20 trucks at the thing. And it's like, oof, you know, like we were hunting like red pine stands in Wisconsin, right? And there's like no
Yeah.
people, you know, but, yeah, so then it was very frustrating start for me, and like in the midst of this, I'm doing all this other stuff. I'm like
Yeah.
getting into elk hunting and like antelope hunting, like all this stuff, and I'm like, you know, having success doing it. And for like a long time, this turkey thing was like a grind, man. Like I was like, how? Like people are like, oh, dude, like everyone should just start with turkeys, and I'm like, dude, I got freaking bone zone here, and I'm like, I cannot get one killed. You know what I mean? I'm like, and I was like, I was very committed to the bow, like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so it wasn't like it was not like I was having no action. Like I had tons of action, you know what I mean? Like I was
Mhm.
getting fairly good at calling and like, you know, like learning more about like how to set up my decoys and like running gun stuff. And I was like, okay, like I'm doing the legwork here and like I'm covering ground, I'm finding I'm scouting all this stuff. And like, dude, I'm having close encounter after close encounter, like sub 20 yards type stuff, and just never closing the deal. And I'm like, what do I got to do? You know? And I'm like, if I hunted with a shotgun, I could get this done in 5 minutes. Like, it's
Yeah.
insane. But, you know, at that time, I'm like, I'm hunting a bunch of archery only public and stuff. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't know what I'm doing, man. And I feel, and like I'm saying, it was like so frustrating to me that I'm like, I'm doing all this other stuff that seems way more difficult, but I cannot
Mhm.
close the deal on this. But it was addicting, right? And then you're like, and now it's personal. Like, all right.
Mm.
Yep.
And whatever. Long story short, find a piece of public. I got like pretty intimately like familiar with how they were using it and all this stuff. And I the I got, like I said, I was getting, I'm not the best, like I'm not going to be like I'm the guy that's going to win some calling competition at NWTF or whatever, right? But I
Yeah.
feel like I can call pretty good. And I
Mhm.
got very good at like understanding their behavior, what they're doing, like almost treating it more like a big game hunt, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm just going to kind of watch this happen and like let it develop and all this stuff. And I was getting real sick of sitting in a blind, man. Like I'm not going to lie. Like I was like that was my
Were
thing
you
for
blind hunting that whole time?
well, I was trying everything, man. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it was just like that was the kind of the easier route because one, I was trying to like film it, so I got like a tripod and stuff, and I'm like,
Damn, you just went balls to the walls right off the bat.
I did well because
Bow
I'm
filming
like,
it.
how hard can this be? You know, but it was very humbling. Like I said, I was, and you know, like I had just started having some success doing some pretty cool
Mhm.
stuff, so I got this like undeserved like you know like hype about it that I'm like, oh dude, I'm just gonna roll out here and like you know. But again, it didn't happen like that. But so yeah, I was really just like into it, and then I was like, you know what, screw it. Like this is what everyone's doing that I see is like hunting, because you see all the YouTube videos, right? Everyone's like, oh, you just throw a decoy out here and like sit in this hub thing, and whoa, here we go. And I was like, well, that ain't working for me. So I'm just gonna go back to what I'm good at, which is just like go find them and like stalk them and like do it. So, and like, I mean, a lot of pieces of public land, especially in Minnesota, are not like nice hardwood ridges with like easy access. Like they're wet. They're like not nice. It's all the stuff people couldn't build a house on, basically.
Yeah.
And like that's what I got into hunting. And I'm like, dude, I'm seeing tons of turkeys, man. And like I'm just got to figure out how to get one killed. Well, then it progressed. I had a couple years in a row, especially with the bow, where I was like, man, I was like getting in on them. Like I was figuring out where once they get henned up and stuff. This was like, I don't know. This is probably not like factual information, but this is like what in my head was real, and like it worked for me. So I'm like, okay. I think I'm figuring out like where do they, because this is the thing on those places, they don't gobble a lot, right? So
I'm sure.
It was like, okay, there's all these megatoms, right? And like for the first half of the season, they just stayed in a giant flock and walked together like it was December, right? Because they were just safe. They went to feed in this guy's bird feeder every day, and then they went back to wherever they were hanging out. And like it was totally not like this is not National Geographic, like how turkeys act. Like this is like I'm hunting Walmart, and I'm I'm figuring out their travel route, like hunting them more like a deer. And I'm like, okay, I know they're coming down this trail and like all this stuff. And then when the flock would split up, I like I could get the hens to respond to me, and that was like my key. I'm like, okay, I got to get good enough at calling to like at least keep these hens in like where I know where they're at. Basically, I found out where they go out into this big wetland complex. It's like super wet out there, but where they would drag because if you started calling, the hens would grab the toms and they'd move out into this super wet, nasty, thick stuff.
Yeah.
And so I abandoned all this like decoys and all that stuff, and I just started like it was me and my bow, and like I'm going, and I was like stalking them through all this stuff where I don't know why I thought I was going to get a shot, because like you couldn't shoot 10 feet in this stuff, but it was so thick that I'm like, if I follow them to like somewhere, maybe I can get an opportunity. And that progressed to me having a lot of opportunities where I was actually getting close to them in like that Phragmites grass. You know what that is?
Yeah.
In that stuff, in these massive wetland complexes, like in the middle of the day.
Really?
Like I'm like, forget this waking up. I'm hunting these turkeys at 1 p.m, man. And like chasing them out into this stuff. And but the problem was you couldn't see them till you were like right on them, so getting a shot was difficult. So it's like I had probably that 2 springs back to back where I probably had 20 encounters under 10 feet, man. Like I'm crawling through this stuff, and all of a sudden the tom just comes right out. Like I'm like, like I'm too close, and all this stuff. So I was doing like what I felt like was a lot of really cool stuff, but I'm like, I'm not getting them killed, man. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like there was probably a lot of information out there that would have helped me, but I was just like, I just want to do this and figure it out.
You learned it your way,
Yeah, and whatever. So it was a lot of getting my teeth kicked in on it, but it, like I said, it kind of got to be like a personal deal where I'm like, dude, I'm just like, I gotta get one killed, and I want to do it with a bow because I felt like I could do it with a shotgun, but I was just like, I want it that bad with it. And I'd put an arrow in several of them and just never got them killed, like body shot stuff that just didn't work out, whatever. So that was a little, whatever. That's the whole thing in itself. But I finally sealed the deal on the first one, right? And I'm like, I remember that day was like wicked, right? Because I think I had missed one earlier in the day or something, and,
oh boy,
and I was so bummed, man. I was like, oh no, it was like maybe like a 40-yard shot with a bow, right? And whatever, missed them, all good. And then I finally had one, like, because they wanted nothing to do with the decoys, none of that stuff. Like I said, I was freaking just hunting them like they were deer, and I found a spot in the absolute wide open, put up a hub blind, and I'm like, I live here now, like, until something happens. And I finally had like a flock of like probably 20 of them come through, and like 3 toms in there, and I kind of picked a spot where it was like a strut zone that I'd seen, because basically how I've hunted this piece was I'd driven in this road or whatever, and I would hunt all this stuff. It took me all day. I'm like chasing them out in this stuff. But every single day that I came back to the truck, there was one standing 2 feet from the door of my truck.
Of course.
Literally. And I'm like, that's where I'm hunting. I'm just going to sit right there. They're there every time, never leaving. So I sat right there, and one freaking walked out, and I smashed him. And I was like,
no kidding.
Yep. So now I'm like, okay, the ice is broken. Proceed, like, but
nice,
it took me forever to get that first one, man. I was like brutal, but yeah, and whatever. I've gotten a lot better at things since then, understand a little bit more how to play the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this spring, I had an awesome hunt. Like I went out there, solo rip, went out and I did some scouting, found one. And this was actually a piece that I had gotten permission on. Me and my dad, spot where we've been deer hunting
nice
this fall, and yeah, dude, it's like. This is like southeast Minnesota. There's a ton of turkeys. Like it's a cool spot.
Oh yeah.
Went down there and got one fired up on the tree in the morning, and I'm like, all right, put the strutter out there, the whole thing, and he hung up, but I called him in, like got him right into like 10 yards and shot him. It was just
nice.
Like the most wicked. I was like, yes, and
it's probably a little easier than killing him in a swamp.
It was awesome. The grass was like this tall. He just came walking right in.
You could see him.
And I'm like, oh yeah, like this is what I'm talking about. And I filmed that too. Never did anything with it, but it was cool.
So with all of those, and I'm assuming you've eaten turkey kind of throughout your life growing up and stuff. Like, what are some of the more fond or like fun experimental recipes that you've done with turkey?
Yeah, man. I feel like I've tried.
So I feel like wild turkey gets such a bad rap, and I personally think wild turkey is so much better than like a butterball turkey.
Yeah, again, I think it's kind of its own thing, right? Like, it's got its own flavor, it's got a texture that's different than like a lot of other things. But yeah, I've tried, dude, hundreds of recipes, right? And the problem is, so like I only hunt in Minnesota right now. I'd like to do other stuff. Like I got a buddy that lives in Washington State right now.
Oh, that'd be sweet.
If you know anything about hunting turkeys in Washington State, but it's like the easiest thing in the world. They're everywhere.
Ton of them.
They're everywhere. They're walking down the highway, dude. Like there's just turkeys everywhere. Like he goes out, just random public spot, opens the truck, he closes the car door, 10 gobbles. He's like, okay. Like just the shock of the door closing, they're like firing off, and it's just like crazy. And you can get like 3 or 4 tags. It's like insane. And so I'm like, I got to get out there. But yeah, so I'm hunting. I can get 1 tag, and I got to start going to Wisconsin to just get another one or something. But yeah, so it's like you get one, and if it's a nice one, you get some good meat off of it. But I have some friends that enjoy turkey hunting a lot, but they don't really like the meat as much. So
sure.
They enjoy doing it. So like I get gifted like some meat or whatever.
Nice.
The problem is you start making a lot of really good stuff with it and people try it. They stop giving you all this meat because they want to use it. So that's kind of been like dwindling down a little bit. But like, yeah, I feel like I get my hands on probably like maybe like 3 birds worth of meat each spring usually.
Nice.
And so I get a
breast and legs,
all of it. Cause I'm like,
nice.
Like I want it all, dude. I want the whole car, like, dude, all of it.
I'm blown away, dude, by how many people throw away turkey legs.
Oh, dude. Yeah. The legs, the wings, neck meat, all that. I get it all, man. Like when I've done, I've plucked a lot. Like I think people, they see that a lot and they're like, oh, well, you should do that. I'm 50-50. Like I said, I like to do a lot of different things. If I was just into like roasting and whole or whatever, maybe I would do that more. But I've just gotten into like just skinning the entire animal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then just taking the whole carcass and butchering it that way. But yeah, you're giving up a lot of probably over half the meat if you just breast it out, I would say.
Right.
But yeah, I would, man. Like I said, I've tried so many different things, like, cause I've gone down the path of like just grinding all the meat, the whole thing,
which is really good.
Yeah. And making like different kinds of burgers and stuff like that. And, sausages, whatever, endless. Right. The one that I've gotten some really good feedback on, just like, I kind of gauge it off of people that I like to give things to people that assume that they will not like it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like right, if I cooked you some turkey, you're like, I pretty much like turkey anyway. So if I
Yeah.
made it, you'd be like, hey, this is pretty good. You know what I mean? But I want to give it to somebody that's like, I would never eat wild turkey. And I'm like, bet. Okay.
Yep.
So
Bet. Love it.
yeah. So the home run, this is like slam dunk. Every time I've ever made it, people are like all about it. Is a turkey bacon ranch meatballs.
Ooh,
they're
dang.
so good, dude. Like honestly, and like not just
walk me through that.
Okay. All right. So any like if I'm just like I'm just gonna try something, like honestly, it's like legit any animal that you have meat, that ground meat from, right?
Mhm.
If you go 2 part, like I'll say like 2 parts game meat to like ground meat to 1 part ground bacon, you can pretty much make any burger, sausage, meatball, whatever you want, right? So that's just that fat ratio, because like wild game's
Mhm.
very lean compared to
Yeah.
like store-bought beef and pork and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Even if you go and shoot like a wild pig, very lean compared to like actual
For sure.
farm raised pork. So the most difficult part with like wild game, fish, that type of stuff is figuring out a way to incorporate fat back into the meat itself. Because like if you were just gonna like, I'll say, like, I think what a lot of people do with wild turkey is they brine it and then they grill it or something
Mhm.
similar, or roast it or whatever. But for the most part, I think people have established like brining it is a really good way to retain moisture. Okay, cool. But if you're not going to do that, um, it limits what you can do with it pretty quickly, I
Yeah.
think, without figuring that out. So like with fish, the way that I add fat back into it a lot of times is with mayo. By like
Huh.
I'll grind fish and incorporate mayo into it, and like not to go all like foodie whatever, but like when you add like mayo and salt, especially to fit like a protein, right? And you mix
Yeah.
it, it becomes sticky, right? It's like the protein extraction is what it's called. So the more you mix it, the more sticky it gets, and then it will like patty itself. Like you can patty it, stick it into
Huh.
a ball. It'll hold together without like adding eggs and all this stuff, right?
Huh. Did
So
not know that.
that's like how I make that sausage and stuff. Is like I run the meat through a food processor first, so it's
Yeah.
like not just ground. I mean, this is like
Yeah.
food processed or whatever. But that mixture gets real sticky. I add mayo to it, some seasonings, all this stuff, right? But with like wild turkey, what I found was like, uh, it's if you go that far, like if you were to meat grinderize it, like run it through 3 times, it just becomes like this paste that isn't that like, it tastes fine, but texturally it's just not that good, right? So when I grind it, I just run it through 1 time on generally like a medium plate, right? So it's like it's just like standard ground meat, like you grind your venison or whatever. But ground bacon has become like my favorite way to just test a new meat. Is like I'm gonna go 2 parts ground turkey, 1 part ground bacon for whatever amount I'm trying to make, and that generally gets me to the right amount of fat where it's like very juicy, holds a lot of flavor, all that stuff. So okay, whatever. So you got ground turkey, you got ground bacon, and then I put in. So generally, when I do this, I'm looking at like making like probably like 2 pounds worth. So you're looking at like a pound, a little over a pound of ground turkey, and then like half a poundish of bacon, right?
Yeah.
And I then just like, dude, like those ranch seasoning packets, just fire that thing in there. One of
Oh,
those.
they're amazing.
And that's the like the basis of it, right? It's just that right there. And yeah, just literally mix all that, make them into like, ping pong ball size, whatever. And then I'd lay them out like in a pan, right? Just raw. And just bake. I just bake them in the oven. You can do them like I do a lot of stuff on the Traeger too. They're great smoked, like super like that. And then as soon as I take them out, this is kind of like this. I like doing these for like parties, right? Or the last time I
Yeah.
did these was for like a big event, like ice fishing event. We had a bunch of people for a photo shoot. I did them there. Made a huge pan of it, and then just like drizzled over top of it like ranch and then like buffalo sauce. Oh my God.
Phenomenal.
They're so good. They're so good. But I mean, you can make them into like smash burgers, anything. Just that mix is really good.
Huh.
But the ranch seasoning is like literally all you have to put in it, which I find is like a super easy, like you don't have to have a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if I go on a trip or something, I
You
can
can
just
make
take
that super easy.
Yeah, and like, I mean, granted, you may not have like a meat grinder, right? But if you do, like, I have some like hand crank ones that I just like throw in the truck if I go somewhere. If I'm like, I want to make a couple burgers or something, it's like cool.
I love that. Showing up to a camp with people you've never met before and be like, yeah, do you guys want some gourmet food? I've got a hand grinder over here.
Dude,
that's awesome though.
You should see some of the setups we've had, dude. Like, I'm talking like backcountry, like, so because I have a decent little relationship with the guys at Traeger, right? So they're very good to me, and they hooked me up with some stuff, and I got one of these. You know what a Traeger Ranger is? You seen that? It's like their
like the the smaller one, right?
It's like the one you would take to like a tailgate party.
Yeah,
it's like a square, and it like has So I travel with this thing all the time, and I like run it off of like a battery box, right? Because you have to plug it in.
Yeah.
Well, like we go on these like trips out west, like I'll freaking be in Montana somewhere, and we got base camp. We got a canvas wall tent set up, Traeger sitting out there.
Yeah.
So we're like making, like we go on this deer hunt last year, right? Whatever. We had a couple of deer tags. It was super fun. Shot some bucks, and like we're coming back to camp, and I'm like, dude, I brought everything to make these flatbread pizzas. Like, you guys down?
Nice.
And so I got like a cast iron like flat top thing in there, and we're making venison flatbread pizzas like in base camp in the middle of nowhere, dude.
Beautiful.
And so stuff like that. But yeah, I try to kind of ball out on like my cooking setups, just knowing that it, like, dude, I can make some. And like when you're on a trip, everything tastes better anyway. It's kind of a cheat code.
Oh yeah.
Like if you're like, this is kind of good. If you make it in the mountains, it's like, wow,
it's even better.
Oh, it's incredible. Actually, after you walk 12 miles, it's like anything's amazing, and that just takes it to an extra level.
Yeah. So whatever. I kind of that's kind of my thing. But I'm just like doing that. Like, dude, I have it on I have a Traeger on the boat, dude. Like it's.
Oh my god.
Crazy. Like just everything. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, dude, like I said, you don't even have to smoke them. Like, just cook them in the oven. I think that was the last batch I did them in the oven, super easy, but that one's probably one of my favorite ones, just because it's kind of like a crowd pleaser, right? Like, dude, like, right, I'm cooking turkey right now, to be fully honest with you. I got to go upstairs in the slow
nice
thing. But yeah, I just got like I think I have a bunch of turkey parts left. So I got like some legs and wings and necks and stuff that were all in a bag.
What do you do with the wings?
Oh, dude. So pretty much what I do, I'll cook the wings and the legs at the same time. So like I got them all seasoned up in there, and like with kind of like I don't know, I'll say Mexican-ish seasoning profile scenario. And then just a bunch of like I go like 50-50 beef and chicken broth in there.
Okay.
A little bit of soy sauce, and I just braise it down for like 6 hours, right? And then with a turkey, like by that time, it's all pretty much, you can pull it right off of the bones and the tendons and all that stuff. So I go with that, and then I pull all the meat, just shred it, like even the wings, everything, right? Because there's actually, dude, there's a
I'm sure
amount of meat on the wings, man. Like, yeah, and because I think that especially for parts like that where it's difficult to just, I'll say, butcher the meat from the bone,
right?
I prefer to braise it because I know I can get all the meat then. Like, it's very easy to like pull off once it's cooked.
Yeah.
So I'll braise that down, and it's like, it's decent when it's done. But then what I do is I'll usually just like package that up, like throw it in the freezer or whatever. And when I pull it out, what I do is I'll like re-season it with like, I normally do it with like cumin, salt, chili powder, stuff like that. Generally, it's from like more of a Mexican dish or whatever. And then pour a bunch of like avocado oil or olive oil on it or whatever, and then sear it in a pan. It gets really crispy, kind of like a carnitas type of thing. And I do that for like lots of different like tacos, put it on pizzas and stuff. It's like, I would say that's probably one of my favorite ways to make wild turkey is that, and it doesn't even use the breasts at all, which I think is crazy. It's like my favorite part of it, and then I'll like do something else with the breasts, so.
I am hungry now.
But dude, it makes killer tacos. Unbelievable.
Oh, I can. You're opening depths of my mind I didn't know I had. So I'm just thinking of like.
Here, you'll like this. You'll like this. So I had made I had made it out of turkey, and I had also made some, God, what was it? Some kind of like, I think I had made some like this was like without me, like some salami that I was like, this was like my first run. Like I'm hanging this in my basement, dude. This was not like proper, like to like age it and stuff. But anyway, so I had made like all this elk salami and then a ton of this, like I just call it turkey carnitas, but it's like, I don't know, you could consider it that, I guess.
Yeah.
But and I made a bunch of it, and so I have an older sister who is not into any of the things that I am, and she has a lot of friends that are like either like whatever vegan, vegetarian, like they're like what I'm doing is not like cool.
Yeah, no.
Right. Anyways, they have a dinner party, and they invited me to come, and like
that.
Yeah. So, and I always generally, if I'm cooking, it's going to be something like wild game, like 9 out of 10 times, right? If I like somebody invites me over, that's what I'm bringing. So I said, they were like, we're making pizza, because they have like a pizza oven, you know, like it's like
like an uni or something.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So they were having this party, and they're like, yeah, could you just bring like some toppings or whatever? Perfect. So this is what I bring, right? I got all this like sliced up elk sausage, all this turkey carnitas, and I think I made some like bechamel, so like a white sauce for the pizza, right? Like, okay, so I show up with all this stuff, cool, and I'm just like helping make pizzas, right? Like they got all the dough and all this stuff, and they're going and making all this, and I think it progressed initially from like I said, a lot of these people are not people that would have eaten any wild game at all, and were like, I don't think they knew what it was at first, and then they tried it, and then they kind of liked it, and then they're like, oh, what is that? And I think, then I start explaining, and some of the people were like interested in hearing about it, or like these trips and this and that. Okay, so you get to chat with people. This is going on, and I'm like, oh man. Well, we get down.
It's an organic game hen.
It was exactly, and I'm like, initially, I'm not thinking, like I'm just like, oh yeah, it's like whatever. I killed it at this, here and there, and like these people are like, what the, and anyways, we go through the whole thing, but we get to the end, and I had brought like quite a bit of it, right? And I just remember these, some of her friends, like these girls coming in and being like, is there any more of the turkey pizza left? And I'm like, oh, we can make some more, so it was so funny, like seeing them go through this, like, there's no way to like, this is really good, to kind of being like, oh, you got any more of that?
Did you deliver it? Like have you seen the movie, The Menu?
I haven't. I have not.
Oh my God, you gotta watch that. It's a terrifying thriller, but it's a good movie. But like I was gonna say, I can imagine you just delivering to men, just stepping out and say, "This is what this dish is," and just going through that. But I think that's got to be the most rewarding cycle, though, going through like people that don't enjoy food like that, and then making it for them, and just seeing it in their eyes, we're like, "Yeah, this is pretty good." But then there's the people though too that were like, "Oh, it's wild turkey. It was terrible." It's like you just ate 3 pizzas. Like it couldn't have been that bad.
It's like mentally they can't like accept that or something, and whatever. Yeah. Those aren't typically the people I hang out with anyway, so I guess I don't care that much. But it's like,
right.
It's interesting to see like different perspectives on it. But yeah, that's, dude, I love that. Like I said, I'm literally making it right now. But nice. I try to do it in a big batch. It's kind of like the way to go, because like it's not something that you're like, hey, what should we have for dinner tonight? You know what I mean? It's kind of like a lazy weekend, whatever, throw it in the crock pot. And then you have like, because when you do it, I'm talking, I got 2 legs, 2 wings, and a neck, I think, in this crock pot right now.
Nice.
And, you end up with several pounds of this stuff when it's all said and done. It's not just like a little bit, enough for a decent number of meals, depending on how many people you're going. Because like, if you put it on a pizza or like tacos, it's not like you're like, there's not like
a lot, right?
Eating a pound of it. Yeah.
So it goes a long way, man. It's pretty fun, and yeah, dude, I use it on like nachos, just like it's good on everything, man.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So when's the next cookbook come out? That's not just ice fishing. It's got a little bit of everything else in there.
I know, dude. I gotta stop being like a degenerate on this. It's like everyone asks me all the time, and I'm just like, it's coming,
It's coming, yeah.
But it's dude, it's one of those things that, at least in my mind, like it needs to be like a dedicated effort for me. Like I have a really hard time, especially that's what I'm saying with like this video stuff, right?
Yeah.
I have
Well, you got a lot of irons in the fire, you know.
I do, but I got a lot of aspirations as far as like my own content, video wise, and stuff like that. And like I said, I have so much of this footage already documented and everything. But you know, everyone's like, dude, start small, just do like an hour each night or whatever. And I'm like, there's no like I can't. Like I need to be all in or not at all.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the way my brain works. I don't know if that's probably unhealthy,
no, 100%.
but it's just how it is, right? So I'm like, you know, because I've put out a handful of videos here and there, and like I'm pretty active on social media, but like that type of stuff, dude, I stay up till like 2 a.m, like you know, like I'm just putting it at like I need to just do it. So, but same with the cookbook, man. Like when I did that one, because the problem was I didn't give myself. The first time you do anything like that is going to suck, right? You're going to have to like work your way through it and be like, oh, I actually don't know what I'm doing. And like, wow, I'm writing more books than I've read in the past 10 years kind of thing. Right? And so like, I don't know how this works. So I'm going through it. Granted, I think the process I went through was like maybe not the easiest either, but I made it work. Okay. So long story short, we get this thing published. It does pretty good, which was cool.
Awesome.
But yeah, like looking at the process of it and being like, okay, I can't do that again. So I need to do it different. And just kind of understanding like, you know, okay, how many hours is this realistically going to take? And the other thing is like, dude, it costs some money. Not to like, the way I did it to print a book was cheap. I mean, I did it through like a independent publishing deal. Like it was, that was no big deal. But like, dude, you have to make all this food, right? Like, like, I mean, granted, like that seems like a really dumb thought, right? Like, yeah, of course you have to make it. It's a cookbook, but like seriously, you know. And so going through that process, because like I said, I did not give myself enough time. We were really up against like just timing for like this thing to drop during ice season still, and it was like, dude, we are nowhere near this being ready to rip. And so like in my mind, I'm thinking like, dude, if I do a wild game one, I want it to be twice as big as this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, I'm like, oh my goodness.
Sick.
And yeah, so because it came down to like, dude, I was doing these weekends where I'm cooking like, I don't know, 10, 15 recipes, you know, in 2 days. And you know, because it's like one, it was to like verify that these recipes were legit. And two, I had to shoot because I shot all the photos for it. You know what I mean? So it was like, you know, you're doing all this stuff. Well, then it takes a half an hour to plate each one and get just the right shot and like, okay, yep, edit that. Okay, those look good. Next. And well, you're like I'm inviting buddies over to just like eat, man. I'm just like, I got.
So how do we get on that list?
So yeah, man, I gotta start like dropping a pin somewhere and just like meet me, you know.
Free food, yeah, right.
So yeah, I mean, like, dude, I the book thing is cool to me. Like, I think there's a lot of other avenues, right? Like Instagram, YouTube, all this stuff.
Sure.
I'm active on those things. Like, I want to invest really a lot more into my video stuff because I think it would do really well. And like,
absolutely.
I'm very like, it's not even like a flex in like, hey, look what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, I really enjoy, like I said, I do a lot of hunting. I enjoy it. Am I the freaking guy that you're going to watch and be like, here's how to freaking go elk hunting? No, but I'm going to do it. But I feel like very confident in saying I love teaching people stuff about food and like how to do it like on an adventure and like bringing those aspects into cooking that I am good at. And like, I feel like I could go up against anybody in that world.
Yeah.
And so like the book thing, it's like a tangible thing, man. It's like, I got like, dude, like I got him sitting like on, which way? This way. I don't know. Whatever.
You got sheds all over.
Okay, right here. So like, you know, I have them all over the house, and like, I'm pumped with that. And a lot of my buddies have the book, and you know, they make stuff. They send it to me. Like, nothing more rewarding than that, right? Like, I get these messages all the time, like, hey, we just did whatever recipe from the book for my kid's birthday party. And like, dude,
awesome.
Like, you know, these people are like feeding their families with like these recipes I created. Like,
awesome.
Unreal. You know what I mean? Better than working at any restaurant I could think, like, you know.
Oh yeah.
And they're building confidence and like learning how to do this stuff. And Cause like, I love that. I feel like people are always like, oh, well, I tried this, but I did it different. Like, I'm going to be bummed out. I'm like, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
They took it, made it their own. That's what cooking is. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's my avenue. I love that aspect. That's why I think the books are super cool. And just something to go back on, like, because there's tons of stuff that I wrote in there that I still like go back to reference. Like, man, how did I even do that? Because it's like I'm experimenting all the time, right? Like some of the stuff blends together, and you're like,
yeah,
it's like flipping through a photo album, right? You're like, as soon as you see it, man, the memories come rushing back of that hunt or like where you were fishing and all this stuff. And it's like for me, like that's what that is. Like I thumb through these recipes, or like I own personally a ton of other other people's cookbooks, also tons of my own. Like, dude, like I rarely, if ever, go into one and like am making a recipe from it though. But I go in there and I feel like I can like gain some inspiration from it, whether it's the photos or a technique they were using, and I'm like, oh, dude, I never thought it. But like, could I do it with this? Like, it worked for them with this type of meat or this or whatever. So yeah, like the technique stuff I think is super important. I love teaching people, and like that's an outlet for me to do it. And I don't know, I just think there's a lot of people that watch a video. Like I said, the one thing that I've seen from like the Crappie Chronicles and stuff, it's like I can literally make a video showing you how to make it, and you're still going to ask me for the recipe because that's not the way like you learn something or whatever. So it's like everyone's different. Like there's plenty of people that watch what I do and they're like, I can do that. Okay. And then they do. Awesome. But for those other people, man, having like a legit recipe or whatever, I think especially that's just cooking, man. Right. Like, there's something cool about it. I want to be a part of it and I want to do more of it. So yeah, I definitely think there's more coming on the wild game side, but I gotta,
sweet.
It's not, I'm doing this on my own, man. It's not like I got a team over here.
You don't got the Food Network behind you, right?
Yeah. Not yet,
Not yet. There you go. There you go.
And, and flipping the script maybe just a little bit here, but like, I think with cooking, especially with wild game, there's like kind of that getting more in the faith side of things now. Like there's that kind of spiritual connection to it too, where I think like, there's so many things that are out there for like, I look at like creative outlets that we have. And I think cooking is such a unique one because there's so many of these different aspects that you can blend together to make this perfect thing. But, maybe just kind of walk us through that a little bit, like how you're able, like I said, you got a lot of irons in the fire. Like, is that something where, like you're able to detach yourself when you get out the outdoors, or is it cooking for you, kind of just tying into more of that faith side of stuff?
Yeah, I think that, man, like that's an awesome question. I love this topic. But yeah, I think for me, right, like everyone's got their own idea of like, hey, what is your faith about, or like your, what's church for you, right? Like for some people, it's like going on Sunday or whatever. For other people, it's being out in the boat, just on some random day alone, and just being like, hey, man, like this is how I do it, And I'm like, for me, like, I love being outdoors and having those, especially like kind of like time to yourself, right? You get out there, it's fun to do it with other people and can be like a social thing. But when you're out there just doing it and you're like, man, like, like it feels right. And you kind of got your thoughts to yourself and you can kind of, go however you want with it. But, I think it's more, to me, it's more about like, I got to find those places that make me feel that way. And I think that's what keeps me going for these kind of adventures, right? Like being in the mountains for me, or just like, in the, some canyon in Montana in the middle of the day. And I'm just like laying under a tree someplace. And I'm like I'm in it, like this is, I feel the most connected there, and it gets me pumped up, and you start thinking about things you're not thinking about on a day-to-day basis, especially like on that level. And like I still like, I think those things can inspire kind of, especially like the cooking stuff too, where it's like you're in a place and you get some passion behind it, whether it's just the overwhelming, just like being in a place like that, or like experiencing it and being like, man, there's something. It's like going to the Grand Canyon, right? You're standing there looking at it. You haven't even done anything, but you're like, there's some legit stuff happening right here. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like I'm probably not one of the people that's the best to talk about that kind of stuff, right? But well,
that's good though. That's okay.
It's just one of those things. Like I think it's just, like you talk to probably a ton of people about this type of stuff, but it's like you have like this personal, I don't know, space that you can go to where you experience that, whatever you want to call it, right? And yeah, I mean, I feel like that for me is definitely a get outdoors and just like live in the moment and like feel those things versus I don't even know, like something a little more traditional maybe. But
no, I get what you're saying, man, because I think you're kind of hitting it right on the head there, because it's like, a lot of times, and maybe it's a little against the code book or whatever you want to call it, but like, for a lot of guys, you don't feel like you fit in at a certain church, right? Or a certain setting or whatever that is. And when you do get outside, when you do get out in the mountains, you get on the lake, you get on a trout stream, whatever that is, you're never going to be closer to, your faith than that point right there. Cause like you said, you're thinking about stuff that you never would think about, sitting at the office or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like, how it is, right? Like, you go to like a mass or something and like, you're kind of, you're maybe present, maybe kind of just like whatever, you're there. But then, like every once in a while, like they're going through like the homily or whatever. And for whatever reason, you're like, yo, this dude is talking to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Like that feeling like that. Like that's what I'm talking about. When you're like out there and you're like, dude, probably should be listening to something right now. You know what I mean? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. For me, that's kind of what makes me feel like that is doing stuff
absolutely,
like
man.
that. And yeah, I guess.
Do you feel like cooking's the same thing for you? Like where you just kind of mentally detach, or like you get in that creative flow a little bit where it's just like you're just kind of in the zone. The rest of the world is just kind of like just on mute,
Yeah, sometimes I do, and I think that the problem with that, not that it's a bad thing, but I'm like, a lot of times, like I do kind of get into that mental space like that, and it's like it's probably fine when you're just like alone, but when you're like cooking with other people and stuff, you kind of fall into that.
Try to be social,
right? But then you're just locked in, and you're doing your thing, and sometimes I think people are like, "Oh, you good? Like, what's up?" or whatever, and so yeah, I don't know. It's a weird deal, but yeah, I'm seriously, man. Like, I think if you're doing something you're like wicked passionate about, like it's kind of natural to probably feel that, right? Like,
yeah,
because there's a reason you're like drawn to that, or you feel like called to do it or whatever, and you're like, for whatever reason, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and when you're locked into it, it's like kind of a weird deal, honestly.
Yeah.
Luke,
I'm gonna let you run with our rapid fire questions.
Oh man,
come on! This is a fun bit. So this one,
he's like,
feel free to keep it short if you want. If you want to elaborate, feel free to go ahead. But usually we try to grill you with like, I'd say probably like 6 to 7 questions. I've got some really good ones locked and ready to go. So Luke, I'll let you start.
Let's do it.
All right. So this is one where it's like, I was go whichever direction you want to go with it. But like, what would be your biggest, like, quickest, easiest piece of advice for somebody that's just trying to get into wild game cooking? Whether it's like you were talking wild game fishing, whatever.
So this is a great question. I do have like a pretty dialed answer to this. So this was a good one.
Sweet.
So my biggest advice to someone, especially someone that's kind of new to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Generally, these are people that don't necessarily have access to like tons of this type of meat, right? They might get like 1 deer a year or something or whatever. Is don't be afraid to experiment just because you don't have a lot of it. Because I think that's what people get sucked into is they're like, we have 6 portions of backstrap. Everything we do with this has to be like incredible or like whatever. It's like,
right.
It's all just meat. You know what I mean? And like people are like, you have to make thinner steaks or whatever. Grind it. Who cares? Like mess around, try things that you think might be good. Like don't be afraid to do that because otherwise you get kind of pigeonholed into these ideas of like,
Yeah,
I can only
same
make
old, same
this
old.
thing, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah.
It's a good one. I like that. All right, I'm gonna go back to classic. You're on heading out early, early morning ice fishing out,
Oh boy.
Big hunting trip. What's your go-to gas station food and drink?
Ooh, okay. They're very different. So
Mm.
so for fishing, I am not a good person during fishing. But I like, okay, fishing straight up. We're going to Quick Trip. Definitely hitting a sausage croissant sandwich, and because it's ice fishing,
Delicacy.
we need that caffeine rip. So it's definitely going to be like a rain or a bang because you need that 300 in the morning.
Oh boy, yeah.
And that's generally it, dude. Like that, maybe a couple hash brown sticks, but yeah, that's fishing. Okay. Hunting, different ball game. Because like I feel like I got to do things right when I'm doing that. So if it's like somewhere local where I can actually go to a gas station, yeah, it'd probably be like I'm gonna be all like I'm just gonna grab like a jerky stick, rip that in the truck on the way there, and probably like a Gatorade, throw that in my backpack. Like I think I'm somebody or whatever. But the like if I'm like out west, man, it's totally like you know what I'm saying. You're not going to the gas station or whatever, but it's like dude, oatmeal for survival. Get on the mountain.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Nice. So going a little bit further on that, what'd be your like midday snack, like on a backcountry hunt?
So for so I've fallen into I keep it very simple on that because I don't like to carry a lot of stuff I don't need. But dude, you take it or leave it for what it is. Spam singles, bro. Spam singles are my number one.
Oh boy. I've not tried that one.
I've tried it.
They're not that good, but they're good enough. And they got a ton of fat, ton of protein, and they're individually. It's the deal. I'm telling you, man. They don't go bad.
I've heard a lot of people use Spam. I've eaten Spam, but I've never brought it like backcountry. The only person I know, is it come in a tin can?
No, not the Spam singles, man. They come in like the like those packets of tuna, like that little tear off the top thing. It's that, and it's just one slice of it in there.
Really? Okay, you, that would make more sense because shout out to Jordan.
Just ripping the can off and just like
well, I was gonna say shout out to Jordan Wolf if he's listening, my buddy from South Dakota. The first backpack trip we ever did in South Dakota about 10 years ago now. We roll out there. We're like 6 miles in. He's rattling. And we're like, "What the hell you got in your backpack?" And we're sitting down having lunch, and all of a sudden he rips out. He's got New England clam chowder, Campbell's chunky soup, and he just doesn't even warm up, just slams it, hugs it down, and we're just like, Wolf. But Wolf's also is like 6'6" and like 300 pounds. He's just a mountain man, and he's got 12 of those in his backpack. That's his food for the trip.
It's a 12-pack, yeah.
Yeah,
12-pack of Campbell's.
Yeah, that's my quick hitter for like a midday though. Gives me good boost energy, and it's just like whatever. It's good.
Nice. Cool.
Whatever.
All right, so you're backcountry now. All right, so you only get one kitchen utensil to bring with you, and it can't be a knife. What is it?
Okay, so I have nothing else.
Nothing.
And it cannot be a knife. Okay. Ooh, that is a good one. I am going to say, God, I wouldn't want to carry it, but the move would be a little wire rack. Just a small wire rack. I've done so many cooking things with one of those. It's honestly insane. Because like you can put it over a fire, you can put it over a stove, you can make coals, you know what I'm saying? Like if you have meat, any kind of like anything you forage, like I've cooked freaking all kinds of stuff, dude, on one of those. Just a little, it's a wire rack with a little flip out.
Yeah.
Legs.
Perfect. Last two here I got for you. So would you rather eat freeze-dried meals for a whole trip? We're talking like, we'll just say it's a 8-day backpack trip. We're talking, that's all you get: breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Yeah, we're talking like a mountain house type situation.
Yep.
In the mountains. Would you rather do that or be forced to go on the trip with zero food and then you just got to like procure your own food throughout the whole trip.
I'd like to think that I would go with the second one just because I'm like,
I got this.
Like that.
Yeah.
Could get real tough.
Man, but here's the problem, dude. I've done this like eat mountain house for that.
It's horrible.
Days thing. Dude, I get tore up, dude. Like, that's not good for me.
Yeah.
And if it was one or the other, dude, I might risk it, dude, and just I might just put it on my back and say I'm gonna just hunt
Send
porcupines, brother.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's good. Yeah. All right, so last one. If you could have one person you could cook a meal for, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, dude. All right. One person I could cook a meal for. God, I feel like I have like several. But okay, can I give you two?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one I think would still like I would love to connect and make food for Steven Ranella so bad. Like to me, he's just like a dude that I think I'm on the same kind of wavelength with, and I'm just like somebody that would appreciate kind of that, right? And I'm just like, God, that would just be a cool connection. One that's totally unrelated, probably, would probably be like throwing it way back to like some people because I definitely like the hunting stuff, right? But like, dude, like a guy like Teddy Roosevelt, you know, and like somebody that's done all that stuff, man. They were like on the forefront of like all this hunting stuff, and to be like, let's burn some meat, dude, like would have been cool. Would be sick. So
that's I like that one. That's a good one.
Long answer to a short question.
Yeah.
No, love it. Well, cool. Well, Ryan, we just want to tell you, man, thank you so much for hopping on. This was it was a pleasure to have you on, get your wisdom and insight on culinary skills. We truly appreciate it, and we'll be sure to throw all your handles in there, make sure everybody can find you, get you be able to find your cookbook, and hopefully we'll see a outdoor hunting cookbook in the near future.
One can hope, right? Yeah. Thanks for having me on, dude. This was super fun, and yeah, throw my stuff in there. Like I said, I love talking about cooking or even just like anything, hunting, whatever. But you know, I try to be good about like my DMs and stuff. So if people are, you know, want to chat cooking or they have questions or they got ideas, like I love talking about that stuff. So always hit me up, and yeah, I'm pretty open about it. You find me on Instagram or whatever. So
awesome. Sweet. Well, guys, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through faith in the great outdoors. We hope today's episode has inspired you to seek God's presence in the wilderness and deepen your connection with nature. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the Wild Faith Podcast on your favorite platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll continue to be a part of the Wild Faith Podcast community. We'd also love to hear from our listeners, so please don't hesitate to reach out with your questions, comments, or topic suggestions. You can connect with us on social media or through our website. Your feedback is important to us and helps us improve and tailor our content to better serve you. And always remember, the great outdoors isn't just a playground for hunting and fishing. It's a sanctuary for finding solace and spiritual renewal. As you gear up for that next adventure, I pray you find God's presence in the crackling of a campfire, the thrill of reeling in your catch, or the quiet solitude found in nature. Until next time, thank you for listening to the Wild Faith Podcast. Take care, and God bless.